Bryan, can you kind of get into like if someone's ultimate goal was weight loss slash fat loss, are there still benefits that they could find from doing a strength cycle?
I do for sure. I think the nice thing about a strength cycle is that you need significantly less carbs. Like if you're going to diet, eliminating carbs is not my favorite way to diet, but it is a very popular way to diet. Yeah, strength work, when you're doing sets of basically 1 to 5, the amount of actual carbohydrate storage that you need is significantly low. Most of your work is just going to be powered by ATP. And so you definitely are going to need more glycogen and carbohydrate stores for the hypertrophy rep ranges, or even beyond that for metabolic, of course. But yeah, so strength can be conducive to weight loss. I don't love the idea of working up to 1 rep maxes when you're dieting, and that's just because your body's already in like a semi-fragile state. Like your recovery is not optimized. Whether you're able to physically perform the load or not, it's likely you probably won't. And then there's the psychological side of feeling like you're underachieving or that you're losing muscle in some way. And we know that 1 rep max strength is not correlative to whether you're losing muscle on a diet or not. And you're just more likely to want to see your strength numbers remain similar in the 6 to 12 or 6 to 10 rep range than you necessarily would trying to work up to a 1 rep max. I do think that there's probably value, and this is actually something that the N1 guys do a lot, is they'll put people into what they call a neurological phase when they diet specifically. So they will purposefully coordinate the diet with the strength phase, but they're primarily working in the like 4 to 8 rep range. They're never going to like 3, 2, 1 max out type thing. And so they're just hanging out in the 4 to 8 rep range. They're using that as an opportunity to take in less carbohydrate, knowing that it's mostly ATP based and neurological. And so they've had great success with that. And so it's something that I think is certainly an option. And the way that I programmed this strength cycle, the hypertrophy rep ranges are kind of lower. Like they're generally, 5 to 8, 6 to 10 in most cases. And so we are kind of treading that boundary between strength work and hypertrophy work. And it's certainly not getting into like what would be considered metabolic, because we have the metabolic cycle coming up after the strength phase. And so I want to make sure that even for those people that are doing hypertrophy, that they're not flirting with those like 12, 15, 20 rep sets right now. So I think it is like, this cycle is great to follow the hypertrophy rep ranges, since they are slightly skewed to the strength zones while you're dieting. I just don't really think that you're going to get a ton out of the strength phase if you're following the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 max out type approach.
Let's say somebody ultimately is like, hey, I totally hear you that, soon you want to be working on weight loss, you want to diet, you want to cut your calories and all those things. But, hey, we have this 7-week cycle coming up. Here's why you should follow it. And I think you'd find a lot of value in it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this so much, especially with women. There's just something super empowering about lifting heavy. And so I think that's really the number one reason. Like if you were to just try to pin me down and be like, yeah, like just, there's something really cool that you feel really strong and badass when you lift heavy weights. And then I would probably back that out and say, and on top of that, you get the benefit of having a better gauge of proximity to failure when you're lifting in lower rep ranges. And so this is actually one of the things that was elucidated in that preprint that I keep referencing, the meta-regression from Robinson and colleagues, is they actually showed that hypertrophy increases as you get closer to and even beyond failure. But that's specific to being in higher rep ranges. It seems that when you looked at their meta-regression and you looked at the sets of hypertrophy work that were in the like 5 to 8 rep range, that you actually didn't really need to be that close to failure, because the reps are stimulative from the get-go. And there's just less ambiguity about whether you are close to failure. Like when you're doing a set of 20 rep leg extensions, most people are going to stop that 20 rep set of leg extensions when the shit starts burning, not when they're physically incapable of actually extending their knee anymore. And so that then leads to most people actually being like, hey, I was at failure, when you're actually 5 reps from failure or something like that. However, when you're in the 5 to 8 rep range, it's like, hey, as soon as you do that first rep, you're already 5 reps from failure. And so it just gives you a much better gauge of how close you are to failure. But also provides you stimulus, like in those lower rep ranges. We talked about how you don't need to even be close to failure for strength work. So by lifting these heavy weights and empowering yourself, you're able to get a ton of muscular and strength benefit without even having to necessarily work to that point of failure, which can be sometimes scary for people.
I would also add too, man, like if you're cross training, like coming from an endurance background, especially, being stronger helps you get better at these endurance events and sports. A stronger body is going to be so much more resilient to injury and be able to perform better. So like, yeah, I mean, take some time to lift some heavy weights and get stronger, and then you can go back to your normally scheduled, training.
You don't have to lift singles, doubles, and triples though to get strong. Like you can get strong in hypertrophy rep ranges. Yeah.
But I mean, again, it's like that's part of the value of just, lifting a little bit, like doing something like a strength cycle. It's just building some more resilience, body resilience. For sure.
Yeah. And I mean, there's certainly neurological advantages. Like we talk a lot in the blog. I write about this study by Schoenfeld from either last year or the year before, where they had 2 groups, and one group just did a hypertrophy phase and the other group did a strength phase and then a hypertrophy phase. And the group that did the strength phase and then the hypertrophy phase actually saw better hypertrophy. So I think that, there's certainly holes in that study, as there are in many. No study is perfect. But I think that can instill some confidence, at least in that style of periodization.